Yeah, I think, just taking a peek here, I think we can start whenever you guys are ready.
Let's do it.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for sharing part of your Wednesday afternoon or your Wednesday morning, depending on where you are with us. My name is Scott Smigler. I'm the co-founder of Grow by Data, and I'm joined by my good friend Eric Young of EY Studios.
Hey everybody, it's good to be with you. I'm also joined here with Megan Bryson, heads up marketing here for EY Studios. Megan.
Hi guys.
Yeah, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to join the webinar and to kind of take a few minutes outside of the daily grind to think big about the business, to understand what trends could be game changers. I know that both my company and Eric's company, we kind of help online retailers deal with kind of different parts of this e-commerce disruption. And what's fun is that we're all in the biggest trillion-dollar industry worldwide in terms of its size and the speed of disruption. We are not in an industry that stands still. We're in an industry that's constantly changing and adapting. And so it's great for us all to be thinking about how we can be on top of that disruption, in some cases causing the disruption, but certainly making sure that we're all thriving as we go. So we're going to start with Eric taking us through what disruption is about, and then we'll jump into 9 trends that we think every online retailer should be paying attention to. And then we'll recommend what we believe are kind of the do-nows and the do-laters. And this all comes from our mutual experience. So at Grow by Data and Exclusive, we've worked with over 1,000 stores over the past 20 years. EY Studios has worked with probably nearly that amount, or probably more than that, in terms of helping online retailers grow. We've seen what has helped retailers be successful and we've seen what has crippled them. So Eric, why don't you take us away?
Okay, very good. Well, the title is Disrupted, and it's a little bit of a buzzword. When you think about disruption, you hear a lot of people calling themselves disruptors, but what does it mean exactly? Well, one of the key elements that I want to put out there straight away is the concept that you have to adapt quickly or die quickly. A little bit of a grim way to start a webinar, I admit, but it really is life and death when you consider that if you don't make the right choices in today's super fast e-commerce economy, it can have a disastrous effect on your business. And we'll be looking at some of the attitudes, some of the overall perspectives that can kind of accompany that. But adaptation, as this slide says, is the only way to prevent being trampled by giants. No matter who you are, you've got some giant that wants to take you out. Some people on the webinar have got a lot of little guys trying to get your space, and you're trying to fight them off, fend off them, as well as fighting your giants. And it can be a pretty daunting task. And so adaptation is really the biggest way to do that. Now we've got a slide here from Elon Musk. I don't know if you saw this from couple of weeks ago. So he went out, made the news. He said, we'll have to become cyborg hybrids to keep up with what's happening with technology going forward. So, we may be giving this webinar in a few years and we'll be Terminators. We'll be part metal, part human. That's basically what he's saying is going to happen. And, hey, maybe he's right. Maybe we can shoot lasers out of our eyes and do interesting things. But, the thing that kind of bothers me with statements like this, even though this is a little bit of a fantastical extreme example, I'll admit, but you have these prognosticators say, this is going to happen in the future, this is what's going to happen within 5 years. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but it's a little bit of a dangerous scenario to hinge your entire strategy based on what a few people are predicting. What I think is a whole lot better to embrace are looking at the trends, looking at what's going on all around you, and making very speedy decisions upon those trends. Like I said, adapt quickly or die quickly. What do you think, Scott? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, I have something to admit on a webinar with a lot of online retailers that last holiday season, for the first time in 3 years, I stepped foot in a mall. And walking through the mall, I actually saw a lot of cyborg hybrids because everybody is walking through and they're chained to their phone. And so in some ways, this trend is almost even true already. But I think you're right. I think it's important to understand the trends and decide when you're going to be a fast follower versus when you feel like you need to be ahead of the trend. And a lot of that is driven by your individual market.
Right. That's a good way to put it. Scott, one of the things that I unfortunately encounter a lot with merchants is they have a mentality of what I call set it and forget it. They'll embrace a certain technology, a certain strategy, and really hope that carries them through for years to come. And this is the exact opposite of what we're talking about in terms of adaptation. You just want to hold on to a system and just kind of let it see you through. So what I encourage instead is to focus on adapting to disruptive opportunities. We can go to the next slide. So we are very careful about what you're taking away. This is a Jenga toy. I don't know if anybody played with that growing up. And just like this person here, they're being very careful about what to add, the piece they're adding, or what they're taking away to prevent the whole thing from crashing. And I get it. Scott and I are both business owners, like a lot of people on the call, and you're very careful about what you're adding, what you're taking away, is you don't want to see your business implode. We get that, but you still have to take risks. You still have to add and delete certain things about your strategy in order to adapt. Now, one of the things that I always talk about is you'll never be normal again. What do I mean by that? Well, back in 2008, the economy was on the ropes. Things were crashing all around us. And, through the Great Recession, that had a pretty big impact on the collective consciousness of shoppers. And so all of a sudden, people are evaluating every purchase in light of their overall lifestyle. If you're purchasing a car, you start evaluating, well, do I even need a car? Is this really the best move for me? If you're evaluating electronics, well, how does that play into exactly what my mortgage payment's going to be this month, et cetera? So all of this is starting to play into this consciousness. And so a lot of merchants are hoping that everybody is going to start thinking the way they did before the crash, before all this stuff happened. And it's not going to happen. The old days are not going to be here again. And we have to adapt to the present modality of the way people are actually shopping. What do you think on that, Scott?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the willingness of consumers to dip into credit, which was happening a lot before the crash, meant that people maybe were a little less price sensitive. But the price sensitivity has increased drastically. And now, do I need a car, or can I do a ride share? Do I need cable, or can I just be kind of off the grid and do Netflix? So the way that consumers make decisions has changed in a pretty dramatic way.
Very good points. And we hear a lot of the same reasons from merchants. And like I said, we empathize. We get it. I've said some of these same things I'm about to share with you myself about EY Studios. And so, I totally empathize with some of these statements, but yet we still have to be bold and adapt accordingly. One of the things I hear a lot, Scott, is we're too established. We've been around forever. It's hard for us to adapt to make these changes because it's not what our customers are used to with us. There's a certain brand standard we have, and so we can't make these changes because we're too established. Another thing I hear is, well, hey, on the opposite end, we're too new to the game. I can't make these changes early on because I have to start getting momentum. But in fact, that's the best time to make changes and adapt, when you're early, because you have to find a foothold that's not going to come just immediately. And so you have to make very quick changes, particularly when you're new to the game. I also hear this a lot. We already tried that. Maybe you tried it, but maybe you didn't do it well. Maybe you needed to do it better. But you can't just write off a scenario that you may have tried. Maybe it didn't work properly, but like I said, maybe you didn't do it right. The next one is we don't have the budget. That's pretty common. All of us as business owners can relate to that. We just don't have the budget for it. And so we have to evaluate, when you adapt, what are we expecting for the yield? And obviously none of this is predetermined. None of this is a certainty. But we have to look at exactly what our budget is and what we can expect the return to potentially be. And we have to dream big on that. One thing I encourage, we go on to the next one, is to blow stuff up and don't do it on purpose. And that's hard to say. It's easy for me to say here, but it's hard to do, rather. when you actually look at what's been established and you're saying, hey, I need to blow this up. This is no longer working. Maybe it worked in the past, but it's not working now. It takes a lot of boldness to blow something up, particularly if it worked for you before. And you have to be very purposeful about it. So when you look around and you start, just like this guy here is looking at this lady and he crashed. You know, he's not keeping his eye on the road. He's not keeping his eye on the surroundings. And sometimes we in e-commerce can do the exact same thing. We focus so much on the day-to-day grind that we're losing the big picture of what's happening all around us. And because of that, if we go on, we can actually look at what we're doing, what's the key aspect of our brands as sacred cows. We can't touch that. I can't touch my logo. I can't touch this about my website. I can't touch this about the way that we're approaching customer service. This is the way we've always done things, and it's worked well, and it becomes sacred to us. It becomes a sacred cow. And I'm here to say that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes a sacred cow makes the best hamburger. You got to grill that sucker up. And listen, that's hard for me. I'm not really good at change. And one of my phrases, Megan, you hear me say this a lot, is that you can't ever embrace change for change's sake, right? You hear me saying that a lot.
Yeah.
You don't want to make changes just because. You make changes because you anticipate a powerful yield. And that what this does is this enables collaboration. You know, Scott and I work together a lot. We have, quote-unquote, sacred cows between our two companies. But we challenge each other, and we say, is this still working? And it allows us to innovate properly as well. And the last thing here is that when you get too complacent about your sacred cows, it kills innovation. You're not going to want to do something new because you're too content with the old. And so if you don't embrace risk, you end up being the subject of this webinar. You end up being disrupted. And that is a very dangerous concept that we have to really avoid at all costs, Scott. So that's kind of my opening argument for our webinar here today about disrupted. Scott, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're dead on in terms of the mindset and what can happen. And I remember in the 90s when Walmart was becoming popular and when they were really kind of expanding and scaling up their retail strategy, they put a lot of retail businesses, small and mid-sized retailers, out of business because they just couldn't compete with the infrastructure that Walmart built, the technology that they were using, their use of satellites to coordinate inventory through their multiple retail centers. And in many ways now we're going through a period like that, and I think we'll have some stats to back this up in the next few slides. But retail really is changing, and we have dominant retailers like Amazon and even like Walmart that will cause online retailers to have to dramatically shift their strategy. This is kind of a 1990s moment in that way. And I'd rather be in a position of disrupting my own company than waiting for another company to disrupt me.
Well said.